Welcome to SolarX Information Technology World. At least for the past few days, we've been learning one or two electronics, and today we're going to proceed with one of the major electronic components called transistor. So let's start by looking into transistor. What does it do on the board, the function, how it works, and the likes. Looking at my table here, you see the circuit diagram for the two types of transistor, the NPN and the PNP transistor. Majorly transistor is being built by the combination of two diodes. It's just like sharing two hand-to-hand diode, and the shared leg is known as the base. So let's start by looking into NPN transistor. Looking at the circuit diagram, you can see the collector, the base, and the emitter. The voltage enters into the transistor through the collector, goes through the base, which serves as a gate. So it's either it opens or it closes. So by the time it opens, the voltage or the electron will go out through the emitter. So it means that the input voltage goes in through the collector and goes out through the emitter. So the same way to the PNP, except that in the PNP transistor, the voltage will enter through the emitter, pass through the base, and goes out through the collector. So this is another diagram to show the circuit diagram of a PNP transistor. You can see here that the emitter is being placed at the top. That is, the voltage will enter through the emitter and goes out through the collector, the same way that is being explained above here. So let's try and see how to test a transistor. You can see a transistor in front of you here, known as MOSFET F12C20C. So I'm going to start by telling you how to test it when it's not on board, and at the same time I would tell you about testing it when it is on board. So looking at this transistor, the best transistor that is very easy to test is when you are able to identify the base, the leg that is the base, the leg that is the collector, and the leg that is the emitter. So but if you can't really specify the each legs, you can easily use the second method. But let's just assume that you know the leg. So let me first use the circuit diagram to explain that. So I'm going to turn my knob to the diode symbol as indicated on my multimeter. So by the time I turn my knob to diode, then I'll go back to the NPN transistor. So I'm going to touch one leg of my probe. So as you can see, that one leg of my probe is at the base, then the other leg will be at the collector. Now at this level, you really see why I said a transistor is made up of two end-to-end diode, because in a diode, I've earlier told you that it will only read current in only one direction. So if it reads in this case, then definitely by the time I turn it to the other side, it won't give me any reading, and that means that this part of this transistor is good. So I can easily go back and test again one leg of my probe to the base and the other leg to the emitter. So by the time it reads, so it means that by the time I change the leg, it won't give me any reading. So this is one of the most easiest method to test a transistor, especially when you can identify the base out of the three legs. Now the same thing can also be done to the PNP transistor. For example, if I should put one leg at the base and the other one at the collector, it will read, and by the time I interchange it, there won't be a reading. And at the same time, at the base and at the emitter, there will be a reading, but by the time I interchange it, there won't be a reading. And you should know that even when you put one leg at the emitter and the other one at the collector, there won't be a reading. So if in any case there's a reading between the collector and the emitter, both in PNP and in NPN transistor, it means that the transistor is bad. Or maybe by the time you put a leg on the base and the other at the emitter and it's read on both directions, it also means that the transistor is bad as well. That's when you can identify each of the legs. So I want to prove what I've just told you on testing a transistor to know if it is good or bad. So let me put the first let me put my negative probe at the first leg. So as you can see, then I'm not going to take the positive probe at the second leg. Fine. Looking at the multimeter, you can see a high resistance. So by the time I put the positive probe again to the third leg, if there is also a high resistance, this means that the transistor is good, and at the same time it means that the first leg where I've placed the negative probe is the base of this particular transistor, and at the same time this transistor is an NPN transistor. So let's go ahead and see the best way to know if a transistor is good or is bad, especially when it's on board. So the first thing you do is, let's use this as an example because it's bigger so we can easily see the numbers on it. So taking it very close to the transistor, you can see on it being written MOSPEC. Can you see it? MOSPEC. This is it written here, MOSPEC F12C20C. So when you want to easily test a transistor on board, the first thing you do is you try and read the number on it. So you can easily go to Google so that you know the right voltage, or let me say the expected voltage that should pass through this transistor. So by the time I search in Google, the forward voltage that should pass through this transistor is 1.30 volts. So by the time I put my negative probe on the ground on the board and touch the legs of this transistor, if the voltage is far ahead of this, it means that this transistor is bad. So the voltage should be around 1.30 voltage. So this is the best way of testing a transistor. So I want to encourage you to go on our website www.solarexinstitute.com.ng and look and read more on transistor. You know, at the same time, there are some cases that you don't really need to do much tests to know if a transistor is good or bad. So by mere observing it, you can easily know if the transistor on board is good or it is bad. So let's look at this particular laptop power charger. As you can see that the transistor on this board is burnt. Going to the other side, can you see the transistor? So looking at this transistor, you should really know that it's bad. So the only thing you need to do is remove it from the board, look at the number, and you look for, or you buy another transistor to replace this.